Welcome to the City of San Antonio's public meeting for the South Zarzamora Street Grade Separation Project. In cooperation with the Texas Department of Transportation, the City of San Antonio is proposing improvements to South Zarzamora Street from US 90 to Jennings Avenue in San Antonio, Bexar County, Texas. We appreciate your interest in the South Zarzamora Street project and welcome each of you to provide comments and your feedback. The process of submitting comments will be explained later in the presentation. Please note this presentation can be paused at any point to allow you more time to review the slides. The City of San Antonio is conducting a virtual public meeting with an in-person open house for the South Zarzamora Street project. The virtual public meeting will be available at www.southzarzamora.com on Thursday, July 7th, 2022 at 5 p.m. and will remain available for viewing through Friday, July 22nd, 2022. In addition, the city is also holding an in-person open house on Thursday, July 7th, 2022 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. This presentation will be covered in both the virtual public meeting and in-person open house. The goals of the presentation are to introduce the project alternatives that were considered, provide an update on the status of the project, and obtain feedback on the project and alternatives. All meeting materials can be found at www.southzarzamora.com. This slide provides an overview of the agenda for the meeting. First, we will begin by going over information on the public meeting. Then we will describe the project location and existing facility and conditions on South Zarzamora Street. Next, we will discuss why the project is subject to the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, or NEPA, and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, as well as provide the purpose and need of the project. Then we will summarize the project's history and describe the alternatives analysis process for the project. We will then describe the proposed facility and the right-of-way acquisition and environmental analysis needs for the project. Lastly, we will provide the project timeline, next steps, location of meeting materials, and commenting options. If you have any problems accessing the public meeting online, have special accommodation requests, or have language or interpretation needs other than English or Spanish, please contact the city's Public Works Capital Projects Officer, Sean Beauvais, at 210-207-5836. The proposed project is located in an urban area in southwest San Antonio. The official project limits on South Zarzamora Street extend from US 90 to Jennings Avenue. The incidental construction limits extend beyond the project limits from Linares Avenue to B Street, a total project length of approximately 0.8 miles. This map shows the limit of the proposed project, including the location of the existing at-grade UPRR crossing on South Zarzamora Street. The project is located within City Council District 5, and the city is working alongside Councilwoman Castillo on this vital project. This is a depiction of the existing typical section of South Zarzamora Street within the project limits. South Zarzamora Street consists of two 11-foot travel lanes in each direction with 6-foot sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. In addition, there is a 12-foot center-left turn lane with intermittent medians throughout the project limits. From Linares Avenue to Humble Avenue, Walton Avenue, there are also 4-foot bike lanes on both sides of the roadway. The existing right-of-way width in this section is typically 100 feet. Here's a picture of the existing South Zarzamora Street intersection at Frio City Road. Zarzamora Street is a primary north to south arterial roadway that connects to US 90 on the north and Southwest Military Drive and I-35 on the south. Just south of Frio City Road are at-grade railroad tracks crossing South Zarzamora Street. In this section, Zarzamora Street is a 5-lane, at-grade urban roadway without access roads. The existing signalized intersection at South Zarzamora Street and Frio City Road forms a 5-legged intersection with Kirk Place. A railroad crosses Zarzamora Street just south of the intersection. South Zarzamora Street and Frio City Road intersect at an acute 35-degree angle, making the intersection complex for turning movements and signalized operation. According to the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, multi-leg intersections should be avoided wherever practical. Multi-leg intersections are those with 5 or more intersection legs, such as the South Zarzamora Street, Frio City Road, Kirk Place intersection. These types of intersections are often inefficient and awkward for the traveling public. Also, they create more conflict points than a standard 4-way intersection. Conflict points are locations in or on the approaches to an intersection where vehicles' paths merge, diverge, or cross. The complexity of an intersection increases with an increasing number of approach legs to the intersection. The number of potential conflicts for all users increases substantially at intersections with more than 4 legs. Lastly, multi-leg intersections often create safety issues for pedestrians and bicyclists. These intersections increase crossing distances, pose navigation difficulties for pedestrians with visual impairments, and reduce the visibility of pedestrians and bicyclists to motorists. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, approximately 35 trains travel each day on the double set of tracks at the South Zarzamora Street Railroad crossing, averaging almost 1.5 trains per hour. One of Union Pacific's busiest rail yards is located approximately 1.6 miles south of the Zarzamora Street Railroad crossing. Increased travel delays at the existing intersection occur due to the frequent train crossings, the slowing down of train speed with trains averaging speeds of 10 to 20 miles per hour, and the occasional complete stopping of trains across the intersection. It's also important to note that the existing travel delays at this crossing are only anticipated to get worse in the future, as freight traffic is expected to increase over the next 25 years. The existing at-grade crossing is blocked for an extended time when trains stop on the railroad tracks and block roadway traffic. The city conducted a traffic analysis for the project to evaluate the queuing or stacking that occurs at the intersection in both the morning and evening peak periods. When we refer to peak periods, we are talking about the parts of the day in both the morning and evening where traffic congestion is at its highest. In the morning peak period, under normal conditions when there is no train crossing, approximately 16 vehicles stack up in the northbound direction, and about 10 vehicles stack up in the southbound direction at the existing intersection. This is shown on this map with the green dots, with each dot representing 1 vehicle. However, during a train crossing, the number of vehicles that stack up increases by approximately 4 additional northbound vehicles and 14 additional southbound vehicles, which are depicted on the map as red dots. Now, this may not seem so bad, but let's see what happens in the evening peak period. In the PM peak period, conditions worsen even further. Without a train crossing, there are approximately 24 vehicles that stack up in the northbound direction and 20 vehicles in the southbound direction. This number increases to about 80 northbound vehicles and 70 southbound vehicles during a train crossing. This equates to over a 100% increase in the number of vehicles that stack up at the intersection. As you can see, the stacking length in the PM peak period is substantial, with the northbound approach backing up past West Thompson Place and the southbound approach backing up to Fran Street north of US 90. The City of San Antonio also conducted a crash analysis to determine the existing safety conditions of the project area. This analysis revealed that the crash rate on South Zarzamora Street was approximately 3 to 5 times higher than the statewide average crash rate for a similar urban 4-lane roadway. This analysis was conducted using crash data for a 6-year period from 2013 to 2018. The crash analysis also analyzed crash severity and the manner of the crashes in the corridor. During this time frame, one crash resulted in 2 fatalities, while approximately 27% of the crashes involved some form of injury. The majority of the crashes were rear-end collisions, while approximately 18% were angle crashes, which tend to be more severe. Since 2014, there have been 8 crashes along the project limits that involved pedestrians or bicyclists. The proposed project is funded in part by federal funds administered through the Federal Highway Administration, a federal agency, and is therefore subject to the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, also called NEPA. The proposed project was developed in accordance with the rules and regulations established by NEPA, Federal Highway Administration regulations implementing NEPA, and TxDOT's environmental and public involvement rules. As part of the NEPA process, the city will be preparing an environmental assessment, or EA, and several environmental technical reports to analyze potential project impacts to the human and natural environment. There will also be other public involvement opportunities throughout the NEPA process, including affected property owner meetings and a public hearing. During the public hearing, the draft EA and technical reports will be available for public review and comment. The environmental review, consultation, and other actions required by applicable federal environmental laws for this project are being or have been carried out by TxDOT pursuant to 23 United States Code 327 and a Memorandum of Understanding dated December 9, 2019, and executed by the Federal Highway Administration and TxDOT. Another federal regulation that applies to the proposed project is Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. This act requires that federal agencies identify and assess the effects their actions may have on historic properties. Under Section 106, public views and concerns about historic preservation must be considered when making final project decisions. This process is an essential tool for the public to provide their feedback on protecting and maintaining historic properties in the community. The city will prepare a historic resources survey report for the project to identify and assess if any historic properties may be affected by the project. This report will also be available for public review at the project's public hearing. The City of San Antonio is soliciting the public's early feedback regarding possible impacts of the project on historic resources. If you have any historic-related comments for the project, please submit your comments as part of the official public meeting record, which will be explained at the end of this presentation. A purpose and need for a project is essential in establishing a basis for the development of the range of alternatives and assist with the identification, evaluation, and selection of a recommended alternative. The proposed project is needed due to inadequate operational efficiency and reduced safety due to the existing configuration of the 5-legged signalized South Zarzamora Street, Frio City Road, Kirk Place intersection, coupled with its proximity to the at-grade South Zarzamora Street Union Pacific Railroad UPRR intersection. This configuration causes reduced mobility and safety for vehicular traffic, bicyclists, and pedestrians. The purpose of the proposed project is to improve mobility and safety on South Zarzamora Street within the project limits. The South Zarzamora Street project has been a topic of discussion for many years, and there have been numerous public engagement activities held. The city has heard and considered feedback received, including comments on both sides of the issue. On the one hand, many community members have stated that this intersection is a concern, while on the other hand, some community members have expressed their desire to keep it the same. Current traffic and freight projections indicate that the problems currently experienced in the project area are only going to get worse in the future. The city now has funds available to provide a solution to the problem before it gets worse. The city and TxDOT are working together to provide a solution that improves mobility and safety on South Zarzamora Street. This slide summarizes the project's history over the past 10 years. In 2011, the city's Nogalitos South Zarzamora Community Plan identified the need for an alternate route in this area. As a result, the city considered various concepts which were presented to the public in 2015. In 2016, the city began analyzing different alternatives and prepared an alternatives analysis report. Community involvement for the project and the city's bond program occurred throughout 2016 and 2017, with the project being officially listed in the 2017 to 2022 bond program and approved by voters on May 6th of 2017. After this, several public engagement activities were held, including 2 public meetings, a stakeholder meeting, and a Union Pacific and Citizen Coalition. The city considered the feedback received during these meetings and refined the alternatives where appropriate. Another public meeting was held in February 2018 to update the public. In April 2018, the Alamo Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, or AAMPO, approved the use of federal funds for the project. This approval was fully executed in August 2020. Shortly after that, the NEPA process was initiated for the project and environmental scoping began. In August 2021, the city developed a draft schematic of the recommended alternative. To update the public, the city released a video in October 2021 to let the public know what was coming for the project. Earlier this year, the city held individual one-on-one meetings with potentially affected property owners to gather their input on the proposed project. Throughout this process, discussions with utility owners and Union Pacific have been ongoing. This slide highlights some of the feedback received to date, including that the project is long overdue and badly needed. Other comments were related to the project's funding or mentioned the traffic congestion and unsafe conditions of the project area. Some commenters said drainage was a concern in the area, while others provided feedback on their desire for an underpass or overpass. There have also been comments on the need for bilingual project information due to non-English speaking residents in the area. Other commenters were concerned with potential impacts on their property. As mentioned, the city has and will consider the feedback received from the public to provide the best solution. Based on this feedback, the city will respond by ensuring the project meets the purpose and need of improving mobility and safety on South Zarzamora Street, and by considering various alternatives early in the process, including both overpass and underpass options. The recommended alternative, which will be presented today, incorporates bicycle, pedestrian, and drainage improvements. The city will prepare an environmental assessment and technical reports to identify, minimize, avoid, or mitigate potential project impacts to the human and natural environment. In addition, the city will continue to gather and consider public feedback to make design refinements where appropriate. Lastly, in response to comments regarding the Spanish-speaking population in the area, a Spanish version of the virtual public meeting presentation and materials are available for Spanish speakers. This slide provides an overview of the alternatives analysis process that the city conducted. The city began with a full range of alternatives and screen these alternatives using goal-based criteria such as mobility, safety, community and the environment, and engineering and other goals. After this, the city analyzed each alternative's ability to meet the project's purpose and need of improving mobility and safety on South Zarzamora Street. Any alternatives determined not to meet the purpose and need were then eliminated from further study. The remaining alternatives were screened using a screening matrix for comparative purposes to identify which of the alternatives were reasonable and feasible. Any alternatives not determined reasonable and feasible were eliminated from further review. This exercise resulted in one recommended alternative for the South Zarzamora Street project, which will be presented today and advanced for further analysis. Following the completion of this analysis and the project's environmental assessment and NEPA process, a preferred alternative will be identified for the project. 5 alternatives were initially considered for the proposed project. Alternative 1 includes South Zarzamora Street with an elevated T intersection at Frio City Road and UPRR via an overpass. A T intersection is where one road meets another at a right angle or close to a right angle. Alternative 2 includes the same T intersection of Frio City Road and South Zarzamora Street, only depressed via an underpass. A depressed roadway is where the roadway has an elevation lower than that of the surrounding pavement. Alternative 3 is a South Zarzamora Street overpass at UPRR and maintains Zarzamora Street at grade. Alternative 4 is also a South Zarzamora Street overpass at UPRR, but does not maintain Zarzamora Street at grade. And lastly, a no-build alternative was considered in which South Zarzamora Street would continue to exist as it does today. Alternative 1 included the construction of an alternate route with 2 elevated through lanes from South Zarzamora Street to Frio City Road. This would include constructing 2 at-grade access roads on South Zarzamora Street for those wanting to continue north on the existing South Zarzamora Street. This alternative would have required the reconstruction of Frio City Road to raise Frio City Road to connect with the alternate route. Under this alternative, there would be no change to the existing at-grade railroad crossing on South Zarzamora Street. Alternative 2 was very similar to Alternative 1, except the alternate route would be depressed as an underpass rather than being elevated. In addition, this alternative would have required the construction of a new railroad bridge structure. Similar to Alternative 1, Alternative 2 would require reconstruction of Frio City Road to connect to the alternate route, and it would not change the existing at-grade crossing on South Zarzamora Street. Both Alternative 1 and Alternative 2 were eliminated from further analysis because they did not meet the project's purpose and need. More specifically, these 2 preliminary alternatives did not fulfill the purpose of improving safety as they did not reduce the at-grade conflicts with the railroad. The remaining 2 build alternatives, Alternatives 3 and 4, were compared in a screening matrix to determine if they were reasonable and feasible and could be advanced for further analysis. Alternative 3 would include constructing 2 overpasses, one for northbound traffic and one for southbound traffic, each with 2 through lanes to cross the existing railroad crossing. In addition, 2 at-grade access roads, one in each direction, would be constructed to maintain access and connectivity to the local street network. To accommodate the proposed overpass and comply with current railroad roadway intersection requirements, this alternative would require the realignment of South Zarzamora Street south of the railroad crossing. Alternative 4 is similar to Alternative 3, but does not include constructing access roads on South Zarzamora Street. This alternative would also require the realignment of South Zarzamora Street south of the railroad crossing. Comparing these two alternatives, Alternative 4, the alternative without access roads, would result in decreased accessibility and connectivity to local surface streets since at-grade access roads would not be provided. This would substantially alter circulation within the adjacent neighborhoods, and properties along Barrett Place, Taft Boulevard, and Harriman Place would lose direct access to Zarzamora Street. On the other hand, the proposed access roads in Alternative 3 would maintain accessibility and connectivity to the local street network and adjacent neighborhood. Alternative 3 would also retain local access via Phyllis Street, thus maintaining the normal, though modified, accessibility to neighborhood streets. Under Alternative 4, however, local access via Phyllis Street would be lost as a connector for local streets. This loss would require additional signage for accessing the neighborhood streets. For bicyclists and pedestrians, Alternative 3 would include accommodations for these modes on both the proposed overpass and at grade. However, under Alternative 4, there would be no bicyclist or pedestrian accommodations such as sidewalks provided at grade, and all bicyclists and pedestrians would utilize the overpass only. Related to this, accessibility for bicyclists and pedestrians would be greatly decreased under Alternative 4 because bicyclists and pedestrians would only be able to cross the railroad tracks via the proposed overpass and would only have access from the east side of the overpass. Under Alternative 3, bicyclists and pedestrians could cross the tracks either at grade or on the proposed overpass from both the west and east sides of the overpass. Under Alternative 4, neighborhood access to Frio City Road would be reduced to an existing substandard crossing at Darby Boulevard, Harriman Place, whereas motorists could continue to use the existing at-grade rail crossing on South Zarzamora Street under Alternative 3. Alternative 4 would require the reconstruction of Darby to a collector roadway to handle the increase in traffic, whereas Alternative 3 would not. Under preliminary review, it appears Alternative 3 would result in a greater direct impact to properties, impacting a total of 22 parcels with 2 residential and 6 commercial displacements. Alternative 4, on the other hand, was anticipated to impact 11 total parcels with 1 residential and 6 commercial displacements. Comparing the two alternatives, Alternative 4 was determined to not be reasonable and feasible and was eliminated from further review. This alternative was eliminated because it would substantially decrease access and connectivity to local surface streets and neighborhoods, would not provide bicycle and pedestrian accommodations at grade, would limit access from the east side of Zarzamora Street to the west and north to an existing substandard at-grade rail crossing on Darby Boulevard, Harriman Place, would require the reconstruction of Darby Boulevard to a collector roadway, and would require increased signage within the neighborhood to guide motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians to accessible routes. Therefore, this alternative was also eliminated from further analysis. The recommended alternative, Alternative 3, would improve mobility and travel delays for through traffic during a train crossing. It offers both at-grade and overpass crossing options at the railroad. It would also allow local access to neighborhoods and businesses via the access roads. Lastly, the project would provide safer access for pedestrians and bicyclists. The proposed bridge structure would be located from just north of Humble Avenue, Walton Avenue to Harriman Place. This is a depiction of the proposed South Zarzamora Street north of the bridge. Approaching the bridge, Zarzamora Street would consist of 3 12-foot travel lanes in each direction with a 10-foot shared use path on both sides of the roadway. South of the bridge, Zarzamora Street would typically consist of 2 10 to 11-foot travel lanes in each direction with a 5-foot bike lane and 6-foot sidewalk on the west side of the roadway and a 10-foot shared use path on the east side of the roadway. From Humble Avenue, Walton Avenue to Harriman Place, 2 overpasses would be constructed, one for northbound traffic and one for southbound traffic. Each overpass would consist of 2 12-foot travel lanes and a 10-foot shared use path. At street level, Zarzamora Street would consist of 1 12-foot travel lane in each direction, a 10.5-foot median, and 10-foot shared use paths on both sides of the roadway. In addition, an access road would be constructed on the west side of South Zarzamora Street and would consist of 1 12-foot travel lane in each direction with a 6-foot sidewalk. Per coordination with Union Pacific, the proposed South Zarzamora Street needs to cross the railroad at as close to a perpendicular angle as possible. The city needs to realign South Zarzamora Street south of the railroad to achieve this requirement. This would result in the permanent closure of Walton Avenue, East Thompson Place, and Barrett Place from the existing South Zarzamora Street to Phyllis Street. East of Phyllis Street, these local roadways would remain unchanged. In addition, Darby Boulevard would become a cul-de-sac west of South Zarzamora Street. The proposed project would also include several other elements, including drainage improvements, signalized intersection upgrades, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, utility replacements and adjustments, bus route adjustments and bus stop relocations, signing, pavement markings, and illumination, and the construction of retaining walls. A copy of the draft schematic of the proposed alternative is available for public review and input at www.southzarzamora.com. Implementation of the proposed project would require the acquisition of right-of-way, including the partial acquisition of 9 parcels, complete acquisition of 9 parcels, and temporary construction easements at 9 parcels. Residential and commercial displacements are anticipated. Acquisition and relocation assistance would be provided for affected property owners and would be in accordance with the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Properties Acquisition Policy Act of 1970. If you have questions on the right-of-way acquisition process, please let us know by submitting a comment or contacting us at any time. We will provide you with commenting options and contact information at the end of this presentation. Also, right-of-way booklets that describe the process are available for download and review at www.southzarzamora.com. Per the NEPA process, the environmental assessment must also evaluate a no-build alternative, which is the alternative representing the case in which the proposed project would not be constructed. Under this alternative, South Zarzamora Street would remain in its existing condition as a 5-lane at-grade urban roadway with an at-grade railroad crossing and without access roads. This alternative would not meet the project's purpose and need of improving mobility and safety along South Zarzamora Street. However, the no-build alternative will be evaluated throughout the EA for comparison purposes. As mentioned previously, due to federal funds being used for the project will follow the NEPA process. Several environmental technical reports are currently underway to analyze potential project impacts on the human and natural environment. After the technical reports are completed, an EA will be prepared to summarize the findings of the technical reports. The technical reports and the draft EA will be available for public review at the project's public hearing. Prior to this public meeting, the city held meetings with potentially affected property owners. Moving forward, the city will consider feedback received from this public meeting to refine the proposed alternative. After the environmental technical reports and draft EA are completed, a public hearing will be held. The city anticipates receiving environmental clearance and completing the design for the project in late 2023. Following environmental approval, the city's real estate department will initiate the right-of-way acquisition process. Construction of the project is anticipated to begin in early 2025. All public meeting materials can be found at www.southzarzamora.com. These materials include this recording, the script for this presentation in English and Spanish, the proposed draft schematic, comment forms, and booklets containing further information on the right-of-way acquisition process. The city is committed to continuing their efforts to gain public feedback on the proposed project. We understand this virtual public meeting format is a bit different, so let's take a few minutes to explain the comment process, which is the most important part of this presentation. The city is asking the public to provide their comments in any of the following ways. Email your comments to sean.beauvais@sanantonio.gov. Download a comment form at www.southzarzamora.com and mail your comments to Sean Beauvais, Capital Projects Officer, at P.O. Box 83996 in San Antonio, Texas 78283-3966. Submit comments online by going to www.southzarzamora.com and click on the online comment form at the bottom of the page. Alternatively, you may scan the QR code shown on this slide using your mobile or tablet to access the online comment form. Comments from the public can be provided at any time during the project development process. However, to be included in the official meeting record, written comments must be received or postmarked by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time on Friday, July 22nd, 2022. If you have any questions at any time, please contact the Capital Projects Officer, Sean Beauvais, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Sean's phone number is 210-207-5836, and his email address is sean.beauvais@sanantonio.gov. Thank you so much for participating in this virtual public meeting, and please remember to submit your comments by Friday, July 22nd, 2022.